When we left off last episode, we were talking about how men are depicted in media, taking the lens of male gaze and looking at how men are viewed. This is the thread that we're going to continue on today, and we're going to start this off at the extremes with someone terrible, yet popular. Sam Witwicky from Michael Bay's Transformers films. Ah, Sam, how horrible you are. Picking you for this was a stacked deck, and yet so appropriate seeing as you've drawn in several times more money than I'll see in my entire life. Before we get into Sam's character, I was asked if I could do a bit of a theory catch-up for the audience, especially since a lot of the vocabulary sounds a bit, well, odd. Kinda like, hey, I know those words, but what you just said didn't make any sense at all. The phrase that got most of the attention was male gaze. In communications terms, gaze refers to the worldview of a given person or group of people. What do they look at and how do they interpret it? Male gaze, therefore, is at the most basic level how men see the world, though it more specifically refers to the combined forces of cultural media dominated by men, notably straight white men. Typically, you'll hear the phrase used in a somewhat pejorative tone because it is usually used from a non-straight, non-white, or non-male viewpoint. So the question that's usually asked isn't, how do straight white men view the world? It's, how do straight white men view me and my gender, race, sexuality? That's what makes this a bit of a tricky subject. While it is a neutral term in theory, in reality it's pretty heavily politicized. As I said at the end of the last episode, those aren't bad questions. They need to be asked, and we need to challenge and be challenged by the answers. But I'm going to avoid them because I want to keep the focus on self-identity. But this is why we're looking at Sam Witwicky. He's the proverbial man in the mirror, written by straight white men, directed by straight white men, marketed by straight white men, and bought by straight white men. He is our archetype. So, let's talk about him. Sam Witwicky is a tremendous waste of space who succeeds through no merit of his own. He is aggressive, hostile, abusive, self-entitled, insecure, paranoid, lazy, defeatist, and obsessive. Not only is he unworthy of merit, he's also quite generally a bad person, or at best, immature and petulant.
You know what? You can give me the silent treatment all you want, but you can't give me talking.
And he's our hero. Let's start from the beginning. What makes Sam important in Transformers? He owns his great-great-grandfather's glasses, he bought Bumblebee, he has the Allspark cube that he uses to kill Megatron. Everything that Sam contributes stems from things he happens to own. Not things he built, not things he found, not even things he mastered, just things he happens to own. He didn't decode the message in the glasses, he didn't figure out Bumblebee's secret, and he didn't learn how to use the Allspark. Hell, the closest he comes to making an active decision is when he uses the Allspark to kill Megatron after being chased through the streets with it. Anyone could have done that. He didn't set out to do it, he didn't come up with a sly plan that went awry, and it's not a culminating moment for his character. The second movie is almost identical in this regard. Sam doesn't do anything. Things just happen around him, and his importance to the plot hinges entirely on things that just happen to be in his possession. I mean, yeah, there's some crap at the end about the matrix of leadership or whatever and how the power was in him all along because he's something important, but again, it's not a culminating moment for his character. The Primes tell him it's because of his courage, but was courage really something he needed to work on? Well, okay, yeah, I mean, he's a coward, but was that a thread running through the film? I guess, sort of, not really. Oh, and Sam is also non-committal. The entire side plot with Mikaela revolves around his inability to say, I love you. Of course, at the end he does, after she says it first, so he gets to win the argument and gets leadership, courage, or something. Sorry, I'm trying really hard to not get sidetracked into bitching about the matrix of leadership. A machine waiting for Sam to have a near-death experience before reassembling itself. It's like, okay, Sam, learn an important lesson about yourself or we're going to let everyone on the planet die. What? Yeah, we're going to let Megatron and that fallen guy blow up the sun if you don't believe in yourself. You're all full of courage and stuff. That's important. Look, just take the Matrix and resurrect Optimus so he can fix this. Note to self. Try harder to not get sidetracked. The best summary of Sam comes from the third film. There is, once again, no real character arc for Sam from the beginning of the movie to the end, though he does at least come up with a couple of ideas. They're obviously terrible ideas, motivated entirely by his dick, and people die as a result, but hey, at least he tries. What we're really interested in, though, is the beginning of the movie, before all the robot stuff gets started. You know, basically everything before
Deep Wang.
that. See, the beginning of the film gives us the fallout of the previous two. Sam has at this point graduated with a business degree and is trying to find a job. Outwardly, the film tries to play it as funny that he saved the world twice but can't find a job because he can't tell anyone that what he was up to, and also a reference to the current economy to make. But the reality is that Sam can't get a job because he's awkward, overcompensating, underqualified, unlikable, manic, tense, entitled, an obvious liar, and he has zero references. Yeah, they repeatedly point out that Sam has some big names pulling weight for him, but they can't blah blah national security, blah blah top secret. But I don't buy that. He still finished his degree, didn't he? Revenge of the Fallen ends with Sam back in class, and they point out that he only missed a few days of Dwight's physics class. The entire movie happens in less than a week, and that was Sam's first year at university. So what did Sam do with the other 127 weeks he was in class? What did he do during the summer? Did he really fail to establish any rapport with his colleagues and professors to the point that he has zero references? Did he not manage to pull even one internship? No contacts? No leads? No friends? Like, seriously, you're coming out of Princeton and aren't even involved with some crappy internet startup? There's only one way that could happen. If Sam Witwicky was a total douche. Which he is. Hell, one of the first things we see him do in the film is kick a transformer. Let's let the gravity of this really, really sink in. Sam's frustrated, the robots are irritating, so he kicks one when it gets in his way. He physically vents his personal frustrations on something smaller and weaker than himself. This is the real Sam Witwicky, a bully, and he's our hero. And this is male gaze. If we compare Sam to Doug, what's really changed in the years between their movies? Not all that much, because the underlying core is still there. Overwhelming egocentrism combined with flailing insecurity. That right there is how Hollywood views men, ergo it's how men view themselves, ergo it's how Hollywood presents men in order to appeal to men who are taught to view themselves this way, so that Hollywood presents it this way to sell tickets to, oh hey, it's like the next point just found us. Let's talk about vicious circles and where all this crap comes from. Something we've learned in the last 100 years is that entertainment and reality are intertwined in some scary ways. Unfortunately, they're not the really obvious ways. Every few years there's another outcry about the impact of violence in media on children or gays or women or, I don't know, rock and roll, Pokemon, usually violence. The idea is that kids who watch violent programming are desensitized to violence and thus more likely to be violent. This, it's not true. It's not as true as people want to believe, but it's still kind of barely true. It turns out that media is actually kind of bad at changing people's behaviors, but okay at changing the way people think about things and good at changing their values. In other words, TV isn't good at making you go out and vote, but it can do an okay job at making you think that you should go out and vote, and a great job at making you feel that voting is something good. And I use the word good in a very nebulous terms there, like a depersonalized, warm, and fuzzy feeling kind of good. Voting is warm and fuzzy. This means that watching a lot of violence doesn't make you more violent, and doesn't desensitize you to real violence, but it does make you more tolerant of the idea of violence, and especially the idea of violence as an appropriate response in specific circumstances. Here's where the vicious circle comes into play. Well, wait, not yet. We have to talk about storytelling efficiency. Okay, when you make a movie or write a book or, whatever, there's a certain amount of efficiency that you need to have because you only have a few hundred pages or a couple hours to tell a complete story. Most movies just don't physically have time to create well-rounded characters because they have to find time to explain how time travel exists and what a Terminator is and who has the what and they're going where and why with it, and stuff has to blow up or someone needs to make a poignant speech or both, so even really good characters end up being boiled down to a couple key points and a handful of emotions. If you want to make a movie with intense personal torment and deep conflicting emotions with broad implications and far-reaching motivations, then that's all your movie has time to be about. Hell, even then you're probably only really taking a look at specific ideological conflict rather than the entirety of personal identity. So, storytelling, as a matter of pragmatic reality, has to limit its scope and focus to a couple key things. This is where tropes and mimetics and stereotypes come into play. You don't have time to develop every single character, so you have to use shorthand for a bunch of them. Most of them. Screw it, all of them. This feeds back into another problem. Movies are really, really expensive to make, so all the decisions that are made are at the service of the budget. Movies are a business. You make a movie to make money. In order to get that money back, you need an audience. But in order to get that audience, you need to appeal to them. You need to give them something that they can buy into. And here's where the vicious cycle kicks in. Media mimics a simplified, idealized reality. Watching that reality reinforces the audience's feelings about that worldview. So media appeals to a worldview in order to sell more units, which further reinforces that worldview. This is called reflexive feedback, and this is the problem with pulling Sam Witwicky apart. He's a terrible sketch of masculinity, a horrible character, but is he inauthentically male? Well, no, not entirely. He's chunks of real problems of social perception, just ground to a fine polish. He's a character that young men can project themselves into, but in doing that, they reinforce a world where Sam Witwicky is a character that young men can project themselves into. That's why I chose Transformers. Even if it's a terrible, offensive generalization of everything ever, people still went to see it. In droves. Like it or not, Sam Witwicky appeals to us on some level. This right here is who we think we are because it's a version of who we are, but that just makes us more like Sam because he makes it okay to feel as insecure as we feel or to resent women because somewhere in our brains we kinda do, even if it's not something that we act on, and it's okay to want to kick things that bug us, and it's okay to feel like you deserve the world because your friends are super awesome robots, and even if you've done nothing, you're still so important to the world that everyone will tell you how special you are and you'll always be vindicated. It's not your fault that you can't get a job. It's not your fault that your girlfriend is constantly angry with you. It's not your fault that everything goes wrong. Sam Witwicky is the meta male. He is the heart of darkness. He is the oblivious admission of our own deepest fears and perversions. He is both stunningly real and insultingly false. He is horrible because we are horrible. Stare into his eyes and face the horror.
My jaw! Oh, my jaw! Can you guys fix this? My jaw is falling. Ah.